answer.
රෙදි කලී වෙතින් හඳුන්වා දෙන magical moments.
What's happening around the world?
And what's happening here at home. Good evening and welcome. You're watching Primetime News on TV1. I'm Theruni Karnaratna.
And I'm Sandro Ferdinando. Let's take a look at your headlines for tonight.
Two proposals formed for sovereign bond restructuring. Hints of final agreements being postponed. Easter attacks deemed a conspiracy. A special investigation commission to serve justice. A pledge from the National People's Power. Maithripala and Nimal Siripala de Silva jointly attend Sirimavo Bandaranayaka Memorial. Chandrika attends separately. Damita remanded again. Israel prepares to retaliate against Iran, reveals British Foreign Minister.
Sri Lanka's Finance Ministry announced that an agreement on restructuring terms was not reached with the group of bondholders regarding the restructuring of its international sovereign bonds.
The government of Sri Lanka has disclosed that it engaged in exclusive discussions with a select group of bondholders over a 3-week period regarding the restructuring of its international sovereign bonds. These discussions involved 9 members of the steering committee representing the ad hoc group of bondholders, which collectively controls approximately 50% of the outstanding ISBs. Sri Lanka was supported by legal and financial advisors from Clifford Chance and Lazard, respectively, while the steering committee members were assisted by advisors from White and Case and Rothschild and Co. Despite constructive dialogue, an agreement on restructuring terms was not reached during this period, and the steering committee did not opt to extend the discussions beyond the specified time frame. The discussions centered on proposals exchanged between Sri Lanka and the steering committee. Sri Lanka presented its own debt treatment proposal, which was rejected by the steering committee. The island nation is asking foreign investors in its international sovereign bonds to take around a 30% haircut and is seeking similar concessions from holders of its other dollar-denominated bonds as it seeks to restructure its debt. Conversely, the steering committee provided its own proposal, which was discussed during a 2-day session in London on the 27th and 28th of March 2024. Prior to these meetings, both parties received a preliminary assessment from the International Monetary Fund regarding the consistency of their proposals with Sri Lanka's IMF-supported program. During the meetings, the primary focus was on the steering committee's proposal, particularly its macro-linked bond or MLB concept. Sri Lanka expressed reservations about certain aspects of the MLB, such as its calibration and the distribution of risks between Sri Lanka and bondholders. Discussions also touched on the possibility of introducing a governance-linked bond, with further details provided to Sri Lanka's advisors on the 3rd of April 2024. While progress was made on some aspects of the MLB proposal, including baseline parameters and risk distribution, differences remained regarding trigger tests and allocation of additional value in certain scenarios. The steering committee indicated willingness to accommodate Sri Lanka's concerns on key structural aspects, contingent on Sri Lanka accepting a consent fee and agreeing to the committee's proposals on trigger tests and value allocation. The steering committee is proposing a fee of 1.8% of the outstanding principal amount of the ISBs. Subsequently, the steering committee presented an updated proposal on the 3rd of April 2024, addressing some of Sri Lanka's concerns. However, Sri Lanka maintained reservations regarding certain aspects of the proposal. Sri Lanka aims to reach a consensus in the coming weeks ahead of the IMF Executive Board's second review of Sri Lanka's IMF-supported program.
Now, there's a negotiation going on between the government
and what is called the creditor committee, which represents about 50% of the bondholders. We have given them a proposal previously. They have given a counter proposal based on what are called macro-linked bonds. The issue here is that the IMF has specified certain criteria that for our debt to be sustainable, our payments, both in principal and interest, cannot exceed 4.5% of GDP. And there is certain assumptions, because it's a forward-looking of where the economy will be and what government revenue will be and what our debt servicing levels will be. So the creditors are saying that IMF is being extremely conservative. Therefore, there are lots of buts and ifs. So if Sri Lanka's actual performance is better than what is being projected, then the level of adjustment that they will have to take has to be lower. And if the level of performance is lower than what is called the base case, then they will take a larger adjustment. Sri Lanka gave a counter proposal which had some element of macro linked bonds, but a majority of them were what you'd call plain vanilla bonds. So we couldn't get an agreement. Some of the terms we are agreeable. Now what Sri Lanka has recommended is that there are arrears of interest of 1.7 billion as the end of last year, and we have proposed a 20% haircut to that interest and a 30% haircut to the principal amounts outstanding. And we would make these payments using 3 bonds. 1 bond to pay back the interest arrears, which will be paid over 4 years. Thereafter, to pay through something called a bond series A, and there will be a series B, which is macro linked, and all of this will be completed by 2038. The bondholders have given a counter proposal, which is that there is about 5 series of bonds. They want a consent solicitation fee of 1.9% of the original outstanding of 12.5 billion to agree for a change in the terms. They have also suggested certain events where if the performance is better than the base case, which is an average of about $85 billion of GDP. Last year's GDP came in at about 78 billion. So if the average up to 2028 is around 85 billion, that would be your base case. If we outperform that, then their recovery is going to be higher. So I did the maths basically. What we are recommending in principal payments is about $10.1 billion. And what they are asking is about $10.8 to $10.9 billion, including the consent fee. Of course, they are asking for a higher coupon level, analogous to interest, and we are negotiating for a lower coupon. So the difference between what we are suggesting and what they are requesting is not very large. And although we were unable to get an agreement, I think we are getting closer, and like any negotiation, a few more rounds will be required. And I am somewhat optimistic that a solution will be found in the next 3 to 4 months.
Dr. Harsha De Silva of the Samagijana Balawege further explained the sovereign bond debt restructuring process at a press briefing today.
දැන් මේ සාකච්ඡාවෙන් අපිට තේරෙන දේ තමයි 2040 වෙනකන් අපි බැඳී.
What we understand from this discussion is that we will be part of a long-term process until 2040. It is in 2038 or 2040 that the agreement is planned to be reached. If the government is making plans to be part of a process that will go on until 2040, we believe that the government should also obtain the opinion of the opposition in this regard. Creditors say that they have submitted proposals so that the country's economic growth is ensured. The IMF agreements states the forecast GDP. They say that if the GDP surpasses the projected value, the majority of that profit should be given to them. According to them, if the country's economy experiences a growth, the majority of that profit should be given to them. A reason for this is that the GDP is calculated in US dollars. The dollar was expected to be about 370 or 375 rupees, but the US dollar has gone down to 300 rupees. The strengthening of the Sri Lankan rupee results in this dollar valuing change. We can see from the statement that they have agreed with the basic idea that the restructuring should be linked to the economic growth of the country. We do not believe that it should happen in this way. It is okay for the restructuring process to be linked to the economic growth rate, but not entirely. That would impose a negative impact on the government ruling the country at any point in time.
බැඳී තිබීම අදටත් හෙටටත් රට පාලනය කරන රට ගෙන යන ආණ්ඩුවට ඍණාත්මක බලපෑමක් වෙයි කියලා තමයි අපේ බලාපොරොත්තුව.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Sajid Premadasa expressed his opinion in this regard.
Our bondholders have agreed to cut the coupon rate of the bonds by a certain amount with conditions. With conditions. What are these conditions? There needs to be good governance. Also, the anti-corruption mechanism should be implemented with a strict schedule. Now, the government has a great opportunity to prove its honesty and its transparency. But if the government's goal is to maintain the corrupt political culture that allows theft in a bankrupt country and steals national property and national resources, then the bondholders who will be restructured will not agree to reduce the interest rates. The government needs to prove its honesty. Please implement these conditions immediately.
කරුණා කරලා බැනුම් කර හිමියන් මේ දාපු කොන්දේසි ඉක්මනින්ම ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න.
The National People's Power says the Easter Sunday terror attacks was a conspiracy led by a group to fulfill a narrow political agenda by creating racial conflicts and riots between the public, which resulted in significant loss of lives and property. The National People's Power pledged that a government led by them will reveal the mastermind and perpetrators of the attacks and ensure that justice is served to the people. This pledge was made public today after it was signed by the General Secretary of the National People's Power, Dr. Nihal Abesinghe. The party stressed a special investigation committee with complete jurisdiction to carry out investigations on the terror attack will be established. The National People's Power pledged that a government led by them will reveal the mastermind and perpetrators of the attacks and ensure justice is served to the people. The NPP convened a media briefing today and elaborated further on this pledge.
We have not yet investigated this conspiracy. There has been no proper investigation to find out whether this was carried out with the intention of staging a political coup. Who indoctrinated Zahran and his supporters? There needs to be an impartial investigation to find this out. This can be done only by a strong head of state and a strong government. So far, there are groups of people who have been found guilty by the Supreme Court in fundamental right cases related to this attack. We have not yet seen the Attorney General's department get involved and charge leaders who violated fundamental rights of doing so. Under a government of the NPP, we will establish a special commission and through that we will file charges against anyone else who has not been charged yet. As the NPP, we have the right to get involved in this. We are trusted. For justice to be served, there needs to be a change in the system and government. Those responsible for this attack will never be penalized under a Ranil Wickremesinghe government. We will make sure that our press release reaches the cardinal as well. There needs to be proper jurisdiction for justice to be served to the victims of the attacks. We promise to create that nation for the citizens.
Calling a media briefing earlier today, Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith, commented on the Easter Sunday terror attacks once more.
පක්ෂ දෙකේම නායකයන්ගෙන් ඒ පිළිබඳව අපිට කිසිම සුබවාදී ප්‍රතිචාරයක් ලැබුණේ නැහැ මේ වනතුරු.
We have not received a favorable response from either of the leaders from both parties in power. Since we cannot expect a just result for this from the current political establishment, we have to raise this concern through other means. What we need is a complete revelation of the forces and entities who were at play when this attack happened. Various statements were made in this regard from time to time. We have several factors before us. During the documentary aired on Channel 4, mentions of names were made. We need a clarification on whether those mentions are true or false. More recently, the former president suddenly revealed that he is aware of an external force behind this. We need to know who it is. Without that information coming to light, we cannot conclude this case. This requires a comprehensive investigation. Politicians, particularly members of parliament, make numerous statements. 2 ministers made certain allegations back then. They have now been appointed ministers of this government as well. If so, what did they say? What is the meaning of this? Were the claims they made back in the day accurate?
කේක චෝදනා ඉදිරිපත් කළා. දැන් ඒ ඇමතිවරු දෙදෙනා මේ රජයේ ඇමතිවරු බවට පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් දැන් ඒගොල්ලෝ මොකද්ද මේ කිව්වේ? මොකද්ද මේකට තේරුම? දැන් ඒතර ඒගොල්ලෝ එදා කියාපු එක හරිද? ජාතික ජනබලවේගය කියාවක් දෙනවා මේ පිළිබඳව සොයා බලනවා කියලා. අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා වගකිව යුතු දේශපාලන නායකත්වයෙන් හැම පක්ෂයකම හැම
Our expectation is for the leadership of every party or alliance to conduct investigations on this. Currently, we have received a certain statement from the Samagijana Balawege listing our measures they will take should they secure power. The faction led by the JVP has provided us an oral promise to conduct an investigation, but it has not been given in writing. We can only comment on it once the written statement is received.
ලිඛිත වැඩපිළිවෙල අපේ අතට ලැබුණාට පස්සේ තමයි ඒ ගැන අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ.
G24 members expressed concern about high and increasing public debt levels, with many developing countries carrying unsustainable debt burden. Now, these concerns were raised during the IMF World Bank spring meetings.
The Newsfirst Finance Report.
G24 urges comprehensive approach to address high debt levels.
The Intergovernmental Group of 24 or G24 members note that the global economic landscape has improved but remains uncertain, with any countries affected by declining access to finance, tight external financing conditions, high debt levels and inflation. The group called for a variety of steps to increase the financing available to developing countries. They also asked for reform of IMF short-term financing instruments, increased concessional financing to low-income countries, downward review of IMF's charges and surcharges, and increasing channeling of SDR from donor countries to needy countries. G24 members expressed concern about high and increasing public debt levels, with many developing countries carrying unsustainable debt burden. While members welcome progress on the G20 Common Framework, they called for the design of a comprehensive and responsible approach that has concrete, impactful measures to support countries in reducing high debt levels and debt service costs. Sri Lanka's debt crisis was also discussed at the G24 meeting.
I have a question online from Zulfik Fazan from Newsfirst Sri Lanka. Was Sri Lanka's debt crisis and the common framework discussed at the G24 meeting?
Well, we did discuss the common framework generally, and the position of the G24 is that based on the latest resolutions that we've seen in Ghana and that is also taking place in Zambia, we think that there's been some progress on the common framework. For Sri Lanka, they have a different problem because it's a middle-income country, so it doesn't really qualify for the common framework. But we did call on the global leadership, the IMF and World Bank, to look into strengthening the common framework in certain areas. One is to be able to deliver very fast and predictable resolution to countries, because it took a very long time for countries to get some kind of resolution, and during that time they were falling into debt. And we also asked for some engagements with the credit rating agencies. So those are the main issues that we highlighted on as far as the common framework is concerned.
Sri Lanka's State Finance Minister Shehan Semasinghe attended the G24 Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors meeting during the IMF and World Bank spring meetings. The State Minister highlighted the deep and wide-ranging economic reform program adopted to address fundamental macroeconomic vulnerabilities that contributed to the economic crisis, including significant fiscal reforms, monetary policy adjustment, financial sector stabilization, debt restructuring, welfare reforms and governance reforms, along with progress on debt restructuring process. Further, he stated that the economy has now stabilized, the growth momentum has commenced.
The IMF raised its forecast for global growth in Washington, D.C., but warned in its World Economic Outlook report that inflation and geopolitical risk remain threats to the world economy.
The global recovery is steady but slow and differs by region.
The baseline forecast is for the world economy to continue growing at 3.2% during 2024 and 2025 at the same pace as in 2023. A slight acceleration for advanced economies where growth is expected to rise from 1.6% in 2023 to 1.7% in 2024 and 1.8% in 2025 will be offset by a modest slowdown in emerging market and developing economies from 4.3% in 2023 to 4.2% in both 2024 and 2025.
Going forward, policymakers should prioritize measures that help preserve or even enhance the resilience of the global economy. A key priority is to rebuild fiscal buffers, especially in an environment with high real interest rates, modest growth, and elevated debts. Unfortunately, planned fiscal adjustments are often insufficient and could be derailed further given the record number of elections this year. The second priority is to reverse the decline in medium-term growth for low-income countries. Structural reforms should promote domestic and foreign investment and increase fiscal revenues. This will help lower borrowing costs and reduce funding need. These countries must also improve the human capital of their large young populations, especially as the rest of the world is aging rapidly. Third, global growth prospects are also harmed by rising geo-economic fragmentation. Trade linkages are already changing. Some economies could benefit from the reconfiguration of global supply chains, but the net effect may still be a loss of efficiency, making the global economy less, not more resilient. And the broader damage is to global cooperation.
The Newsfirst Finance Report.
Iranian state media reports that Iranian emergency services rescued 21 Sri Lankan crew of a ship that capsized in heavy storms in the Gulf of Oman. An official from the IRNA news agency said that the Cook Islands flagged vessel carrying oil went down about 50 kilometers off the southern city of Chas. Newsfirst will continue to monitor this developing story and provide updates as and when they are provided. Meanwhile, Maithripala Sirisena and Nimal Siripal de Silva, representing the SLFP, who have been the topic of discussion in the political arena as of late, met at the same location earlier today. This scenario unfolded during an event to commemorate the 108th birth anniversary of Sri Mavo Bandaranaike earlier today.
When's the election?
An event was held at the BMICH this morning to commemorate the birth anniversary of Sri Mavo Bandaranaike. Both parties of the SLFP, who are currently embroiled in a political crisis, were present at the event. Minister of Justice Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa also attended the event. Nimal Siripala de Silva addressed the crowd after paying floral tributes to Sri Mavo Bandaranaike's memorial.
She made a smart decision by not handing over the post of organization of the party in exchange for money. Instead, she found stronger organizers. She did not hand over the organization to vagrants in the streets. That is how she protected this party. This is why she is more like a man than a woman. Therefore, we need a leadership similar to hers, and we need leadership of a man to take this party forward. That is the first reason. The second reason is that we have built a trust to work with her. When we wake up next morning, our party membership was not removed. She upheld the democracy of the party. Her son Anura Bandaranaike's letter banning the membership from the party was taken by me to her to get it signed. She kept her hand like this for 2 minutes and then signed it. Others weren't removed. She was not a dictator, nor did she attempt to change the party constitution, requesting more power for her. Because of this, she was loved by many.
Maithripala Sirisena also addressed the gathering.
I ask you, as members of the SLFP, can you look at these statues and think of joining other political parties? When the former Prime Minister SWRD Bandaranaike was killed, there was no LTTE, nor the JVP, nor the UNP. It was the people of the party that killed their leader. The party that had 2/3 in 1970 dropped to 8 seats in 1977. Who is at fault? Was it the UNP? No, it was the government of the time. but Prime Minister Bandaranayake removed corrupt individuals in this cabinet. After the keynote speeches, Minister Nimal Siripala De Silva left the location and the rest of the group joined a tea party. Following the event, a few ministers spoke to the media.
දෙමකාරක සභාවේ විශාල පිරිසක් මේ විජේදාස රාජපක්ෂ මහතා ජනාධිපතිතුමන් අපේක්ෂිත දූරයට එනවට කැමැති කියලා ආරංචි පැතුණා ගොඩක් මාධ්‍ය වාර්තා කියලා. ඉතින් ඔබතුමා ඒක ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරනවා.
නෑ මට පෞද්ගලිකව එතුමායි මමයි හුඟක් හොඳ මිත්‍රයෝ. එතුමා පෞද්ගලික ප්‍රශ්නයක් එතුමා එක්ක මගේ නැහැ. නමුත් ශ්‍රීලංකාදාස පක්ෂයේ එතුමා අපේක්ෂකයා කියලා සාකච්ඡා කරලාවත් එතුමාව අරගෙන ඉන්නවත් එහෙම තීන්දුවක් අරගෙනවත් අපේ සමස්ත මධ්‍යමකාරක සභාවේ ඒ වෙනුවෙන් ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන්න න්‍යාය පත්‍රානුකූලව සාකච්ඡාවක් ඇති කළා නැහැ.
Meanwhile, another memorial led by former President Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunga was held today to commemorate Sirimawa Bandaranayake. MP Patadi Champika Ranawaka also attended the event.
ඔබතුමියගේ බලාපොරොත්තුව ශ්‍රී ලංකා නිදහස් පක්ෂ එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයට ගැට ගහන්න. මෛත්‍රී මාත්‍ය කියනවා මේක ඇත්තද? පට්ට බොරුනේ.
That is a blatant lie. When he tried to tie the SLFP to the SLPP, I said not to do it. 92% of the organizers of the SLFP signed a letter requesting not to do so, but to stay independent at that time. They all were in the same opinion as I was. Thereafter, he kicked me out of the party just because of what I said. 50 other members were also kicked out just because they were on the stance I was. Then, he linked the party to the SLPP. So, why do we need to join the UNP now? A UNP government does not exist anymore, but rather a SLPP government under the leadership of Ranil Wickremesinghe. He divided the SLFP I handed over to him into 6 pieces. Who is responsible for this? Who destroyed this? Their statements differ based on the time of the day. If so, how will they lead a party forward?
When's the election?
Is the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna facing a crisis? Parliamentarian S.M. Chandrasena answered the query today after assuming duties as the chairman of the Anuradhapura District Coordinating Committee.
No, our party is not in crisis. People who are in our party will remain. Those who are gone are gone. We cannot stop those who are going. The people who remain are resilient. The members have not gone, but some ministers have gone because of official positions. Some have left because they are afraid of losing. Some believe the party will not develop further. We have nothing to do with that. Our party members are with us.
Founder of DP Education, Dhammika Pereira, who has expressed interest to contest the presidential election, launched a new model village concept today. The initiative aims to fortify a rural economy and is named Pohsat Gamak Pohsat Ratak, loosely translated to a rich village, a rich country.
The program was launched centering the Vagama Sri Dharma Lankara Vidyatanaya in the Bibila Divisional Secretariat in the Monragal district. Under this initiative, 18 programs including a community kitchen, DP Education preschool, smart classroom, digital vocational training center, IT campus, Silicon Valley IT office, language school, sports school, cultivation programs for endangered plants, one crop per village concept for the permanent and supplemental crop cultivation, free Wi-Fi zone and youth leadership club will be implemented in these model villages.
I have been informing former President Mahinda Rajapaksa that Sri Lankan children should be taught IT. He had that vision back then as well. He said that he had a plan to establish 1,000 IT labs. I tried telling him twice. However, it did not seem like that government would implement that project. In the end, I constructed those labs with my own funds and named it Mahindodaya Lab, so that it would look like an initiative of the government. If I hadn't done it, that lab would be named DP Lab. By now there are 1000 Mahindodaya labs. However, there is no use because by 2015 the program was no longer in action and it had come to a point where internet connection had to be provided using fiber optics. It is this failed program that I tried to re-implement through the DP Education IT campus. I had a vision regarding what should be taught. I wanted to be of international standards. It took 12 years to reach this level. If I launch a program, I make sure to see it through to the end.
ජාත්‍යන්තරයේ උගන්වන විදිහටම උගන්වන්න ඕන. ඉතින් එතකොට ඒ 2012 ඉඳලා මේ අවුරුදු 12කින් තමයි මේ අද මේ රිසල්ට් එක තියෙන්නේ. ඉතින් ඒ වගේම තමයි මොකද මට සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මම වැඩක් පටන් ගත්තොත් ඒ වැඩේ ඉවර වෙනකම්ම ඒ කියන්නේ ඒකේ ප්‍රතිඵල හම්බ වෙනකම්ම මේක පිටිපස්සෙන් ඉන්නවා.
Dhammika Pereira also joined an event to distribute gifts at the Urdu celebrations organized by the Bibile Divisional Secretariat.
Newsfirst with the people.
The United States will impose new sanctions targeting Tehran after Iran's large-scale attack on Israel over the weekend.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said the Biden administration would use sanctions, quote-unquote, to continue disrupting the Iranian regime's malign and destabilizing activity. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi warned that the smallest action against Iran's interests would be met with a severe, extensive and painful response. Iran's ambassador to Sri Lanka, Dr. Alireza Dilkosh, in a statement said that the recent military action against Israel targeted military objectives and not civilian precincts. He said that it was precise and carried out carefully to minimize the potential for escalation and prevent harm to civilians. The ambassador said that this action was in the exercise of Iran's inherent right to self-defense as outlined in Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations and in response to the Israeli regime recurring military aggressions, particularly its armed attack on the 1st of April 2024 against Iranian diplomatic premises. He said that the Islamic Republic of Iran reiterates its consistent position that it does not seek escalation or spillover of the conflict in the region. Further, the ambassador said that Iran has no intention of engaging in conflict with the United States in the region, adding that should the United States initiate military operations against Iran, its citizens or interests, Iran will reserve its inherent right to respond proportionately. At the same time, the embassy of the State of Palestine in a statement said that the hostilities against Palestinian people is unprecedented in a world where countries are accountable to international law and international humanitarian law. The embassy said that the international community must not only issue strong condemnation but take practical and concrete steps to impose harsh punishments against such brutality. The embassy stressed that all international countries should once again demonstrate its unwavering commitment by strongly condemning such atrocities against innocent Palestinians. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert has urged his government not to respond militarily to Iran's weekend attacks. While Iran's attack was quote-unquote despicable, Olmert said the state of Israel proved its power, strength and capability when it is prepared and not indifferent or arrogant. Israel's war cabinet ended their 5th meeting to discuss a response to Iran's attack without a conclusion. They are reviewing military and diplomatic options. The United States expects Israel's reaction will be limited in scope, and regional leaders and allies of Israel have called for restraint. Israel said some of Iran's weekend strikes are launched from Iraq, but Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammad Shia al-Sudani has denied it. The United States will restrict the movements of Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian and his delegation while they are in New York this week.
ඔබේ සෞඛ්‍ය කොටසක්. ඉතින් ඇයි ඔබ ඔබේ පවුලේ අයගෙන් හංගන්නේ? ඊවා විශ්වාසයෙන් පෙරමුණේ.
The mortal remains of the late Dr. A.T. Ariratna, founder of the late Sarvodaya Shramadana movement, were brought to the Sarvodaya headquarters in Moratuwa today for public to pay their last respects.
The remains of the late Dr. A.T. Ariratna will be placed at the Sarvodaya headquarters in Moratuwa from 6 p.m. today until 1 p.m. on Saturday the 20th. The final rites will be held at the Independence Square on Saturday the 20th at 4 p.m. with state honours.
In
1969, he won the Gremon Magsaysay Award for Community Leadership, which is considered the Nobel Prize of Asia. Then came Baldwin Award for International Development. He was also awarded the Gandhi Peace Prize in the 90s, which is an award presented by India to social leaders from foreign nations. He has received such a large number of accolades for his work. Through those, he has brought great pride to Sri Lanka. Former State Minister Palitha Thevara Peruma passed away on Tuesday evening after being electrocuted in his garden in Mathugama. A large numbers of locals gathered at the Nagoda Hospital in Kaluthara yesterday upon being notified of his demise. The Mathugama Additional Magistrate and the Kaluthara Specialist Judicial Medical Officer who arrived at the scene of the electrocution conducted the on-site investigations today. The post-mortem confirmed that the death of former State Minister Palitha Thevara Peruma was due to severe damage to internal organs of the body caused due to the electric shock.
Activist and actress Damitha Aberatna and her husband have been further remanded until the 24th of April. The decision was made after they were produced before the Colombo Additional Magistrate Manjula Ratnayaka today.
As the investigations against the suspects are complex, the magistrate made the order after the investigation officers requested that they be remanded in custody. The Criminal Investigation Department recently arrested Damitha Aberatna and her husband for allegedly committing a fraud of nearly 3 million rupees by claiming that they would be granted visas in Korea.
අවුරුද්ද ඉතාම සතුටින් සැමරුවා. ඇතුලේ ඉන්න ගොඩක් ආදරණීය මිනිස්සු. ලක්මෑණි මොනවාරි කියන්න අපිට. ලක්කම ගොඩක් හයියයි. ශක්තිමත්. මේ වලින් වැටෙන්න බෑ. මේ වලින් වැටෙන්න බෑ. නීතියට ගරු කරන අවනීතියට අපි ගරු කරන්නේ. හොඳට මොලේ කල්පනා කරන්න. මේ රට ආපහු කාලකන්නියට දෙනවද? හරි මිනිස්සුන්ට දෙනවද කියලා. හොඳ මිනිස්සුන්ට දෙන්න. Thank you.
The plaintiffs who were present in court also expressed their views to the media. They have taken 2 of my vehicles and 1 of my friend Hematha's vehicle and hid them without paying the rent. After that, they said that they will return the vehicle, but they did not. And after it was over, they brought a Korean man to Sri Lanka and went everywhere in the vehicle with him. Thereafter, they showed Sajit Premadasa and took my other vehicle. I don't even know how they changed the registration details of the vehicle. They're trying to make this political now by saying that this is related to the SLPP and the JVP. This is not even politics.
මේක දේශපාලනයක් ගෑවිලාවත් නැහැ. ඔබතුමා මෙතුමේට රීදුරු නෑ මං දමිතගේ මං රීදුරු දමිත මගේ රීදුරු. මං දමිතගේ රීදුරු වෙලා ඉඳලා නෑ. දැන් එතුමී සඳහන් කළා අපිට ඔබතුමා ඒගේ රීදුරු වශයෙන් නෑ එතුමා බොරු කියන්නේ තියෙන්නේ. ඔබතුමා විසින් අයට මුදල් ලබා දීම සඳහා තිබෙනවා. ඒ නිසා වෙනුවෙන් පටලපු නඩුවක් කියලා ඒ මාස. ඔය එතකොට එහෙනම් දමිතව නෙමෙයි හිමන් කරන්නේ මාවනේ.
Naujuan heavy thunderstorms lashed the United Arab Emirates yesterday, dumping the heaviest rain ever recorded in the country in the span of hours as it flooded out portions of major highways and Dubai's international airport.
Yes, Harshini, now the world's busiest air hub for international passengers confirmed a halt at exactly 7:26 p.m. before announcing a resumption in services more than 2 hours later.
The airport, which had been expecting more than 100 flight arrivals yesterday, took the equally unusual step of briefly halting its operations in the chaos caused by the storm.
Dubai, the Middle East financial center, has been paralyzed by the torrential rain that caused floods across the UAE and Bahrain and left 18 dead in Oman on Sunday and Monday.
Dubai airport operations were suspended for 25 minutes in the afternoon before resuming. Unconfirmed images on social media showed planes taxiing across an apron flooded with standing water.
Departure flights remained in operation during the evening but were plagued with delays and cancellations, while access routes to the airport were also badly flooded.
Similar scenes were reported across Dubai and elsewhere in the UAE, as the oil-rich Gulf state, better known for its arid climate and intense summer heat, reeled from the storm.
Hashini, now shifting your attention to Indonesia, at least 800 people in Indonesia's North Sulawesi province have been evacuated after multiple eruptions of the area's Ruang volcano, which for days had spewed lava and ash clouds into the sky, the country's volcano agency confirmed.
Juad, the volcano located on Ruang Island, which is about 100 kilometers from the provincial capital Manado, has erupted 3 times since yesterday.
Authorities have raised the alert level to the second highest level following the increased activity.
The eruption of Mount Ruang were triggered by recent earthquakes on the island, with the mountain emitting dangerous and explosive hot clouds as high as 1.8 kilometers into the sky.
Ruang Island is home to about 838 residents, most of whom have now been evacuated to the nearest island, Tagulangdang.
And that's all the news we have for the world today. Bringing you the news, I'm Hashni Pathirana.
And I'm Jadabdin. It's back to the studios. Hello, welcome to the Newsfirst Sports Roundup. On today's highlight, the flame for the 2024 Paris Olympics has been lit in Olympia, the birthplace of the ancient Olympics. The flame will now begin its journey in a relay to light the cauldron in order to mark the opening of the Summer Games. Dignitaries and members of the public gathered in the stadium where the earliest recorded games were held in 776 BC to witness the lighting of the flame. In a choreographed event high in symbolism, inspired by the traditions and values of ancient Greece, actresses dressed as ancient priestesses entered the stadium to gracefully accompany the head priestess to the temple of Hera, where religious ceremonies are thought to have taken place in ancient Greece, where the lighting ceremony is held. Asking for the help of the god of light, Apollo, the head priestess lit the flame with the help of the rays of the sun, holding a fuel-filled torch to a parabolic mirror. The first such choreographed ritual was first established for the 1936 Berlin Games, with the costumes and torch designs capturing the minds of creatives. In ancient Olympia, home of the ancient Olympics for more than 1,000 years, a flame was thought to burn perpetually on a shrine symbolizing the eternal spirit of the games, the enduring pursuit of excellence and human unity. With that, we wrap up today's edition of the Sports Roundup. I'll see you soon with another edition.
Meanwhile, Sri Lankan badminton player Viren Netthasinghe qualified for the 2024 Paris Olympics. Notably, he He is the youngest badminton player in the world to qualify for this year's Olympics.
20-year-old Viren Nettasinghe participated in competitions held in various countries around the world over the past few months to achieve the required level of performance to qualify for the 2024 Paris Olympics. He participated in badminton tournaments held in many countries including Poland, Netherlands and Thailand. At this year's Paris Olympics, 38 badminton players will have the opportunity to directly qualify after passing required levels of performance. Accordingly, Viren Nettasinghe of Sri Lanka qualified for Paris 2024, finishing as the 32nd among them. He is the first Sri Lankan player to qualify for the Olympics this year and also joined the record books as the youngest badminton player of this year's Olympics. Viren Nettasinghe is the first Sri Lankan badminton player to secure a direct Olympic berth after passing the performance level following Niluka Karunaratne in 2012.
And with that, we wrap up primetime news for tonight, but do stay tuned. Face the Nation coming up right after this.
Thank you for watching. Good night.